on with the plan. Adam, if you have never seen him before, he hasn't been hiding. He's definitely been out there at Agile Open Northwest and Kaizen Camp and lots of different events locally. Done some traveling and presenting. Something about them actually clapping. Was it in Canada?
Celebrated international speaker.
Yeah, I think too, if you click your heels and say lean coffee twice, Adam just magically appears. So he's kind of the flag bearer, around town for that.
Oh no, you're right. It's not hard to get him to clap.
Is that when you got in line at the border, they started clapping? Oh, no.
And he's also a sailing man, so if you want to swap stories about, your gear or your boat or...
Yeah.
So, but, yeah, other than that, I know it's going to be provocative, in your face.
Yeah.
So... Yeah, just give it back to him.
The more expectations you can lay out ahead of time, the better.
So long as it's a productive use of that time.
It won't be. I promise.
It will be time.
Yes.
Yeah,
I have to do the setting of things.
Keep them guessing.
Is the TV going to go away? Nice and all, but
It's a great presentation.
oh, I'm not connected.
I like the visuals.
I'm not connected anymore. Ah. Ta-da!
We got sandwiches. It's a great spread.
Just in time attendance.
Yeah, seriously. Tardy people. You're wasting all of our productive time. So, slide deck, this is a new thing for me. I usually do Jim Benson style and lay out sticky notes and then wander around and whatnot. So just because I have a deck doesn't mean I'm going to stick to it. I may wander around. I want to invite you guys to ask questions, interact. I get more out of this if you guys are engaged and want to have conversation. I want to talk about productivity and how it's killing us. In the figurative sense. There's a great guy in Canada, Brian Beecham. He talks about how productivity is killing us in the literal sense, that we need to not work as much insofar as we should have lives where we do healthy things and eat well and not treat our bodies like a vehicle for our brain. But that's not what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about resource utilization versus flow, or resource efficiency versus flow efficiency. So who am I? I'm distorted a bit. My name's Adam Uret. I'm an independent consultant with my company's Context-Driven Agility. I spent a lot of time at massive enterprise retailers in the last 2013. Had a few smaller clients, but I would say the bulk of my year was spent at two very large retailers who were struggling with how to do the agiles in their context. I'm also a husband and dad, and as Jeff mentioned, a sailor. These are my two favorite people in the world. I wouldn't be a humanistic advocate if I didn't take a moment to thank them for making my life possible. They're really awesome. That's Christina and Ben on our little boat. This is my other interest. That's the banana stand. Can you get the lights down a little bit? Is that possible? Or it's a little fleshed out, and I really like to be able to see.
It'll be nap time.
Roll that
chair
back
back
a
over.
little.
People can't see over on the other side either.
Possibility. Anyway. So that's the banana stand. Oh yeah.
All right.
It's only we've got
see
dark
the
or
boat
light.
All right.
So that's my little racing sailboat. Dan Dosen races with me. This was back in February. We were supposed to have a huge storm. It was supposed to be really awful, and that's the kind of day that we ended up getting in the San Juan Islands in the middle of February. I live it up here. The other thing I really like to do is learn. This was that same race. So
learning.
The wind did get up later, and we had a couple of issues. And as is so often the case, there's a camera boat right behind you when the really epic heroic stuff happens.
I can see myself in that.
Oh, there was Dan's in that picture. He's trying not to fall off from the top of the boat, the new top. So, yeah, it was good. It was a really good time. It was lots of learning. We took it a little easier from then on. But yeah, there's a really great video of them showing us, setting up our kite, and I could tell they were thinking, this is going to be epic. The kite's going to go up, and they're just going to rock it off. It's going to be this great hero moment, and then that's what we gave them. It was pretty entertaining. So, enough about me. Why are we here? That's a grand question that we're all asking each other, but might be a little bit outside of the scope.
Would you like lights?
This conversation.
Should we keep it like this, or?
I think it's all right. I mean, is there anybody falling asleep, or do you want the lights back on?
Keep working on us.
All right. There will be a couple of graphs that'll make you fall asleep. Anything did you say?
Oh, well, I was just hoping to take notes.
Oh, let's have lights then.
Oh.
To the lights.
I mean, is there any way to like?
So turn those lights back there
it's
on
all
and leave
or
these on?
nothing. It's all
I
or
see.
nothing.
Got it. That's fine.
There's no more capsized boats from here.
No, but I don't care if you guys can see this stuff. You've seen my boat. That's what matters. So, oh right, at SEASPIN, not existentially, why are we here? We're here, I hope, to discuss how the relentless pursuit of productivity is constraining our ability to effectively deliver value to our customers and businesses, and discuss some alternatives to this approach of optimizing for busyness. But first, an apology. I was shooting for, let's just talk about flow efficiency versus resource efficiency, and as I'm building the thing up, I'm thinking, well, I gotta talk about that thing and this thing over there, so it might seem a bit like we're gonna drink from the fire hose, and I really encourage anybody to stop me and say, you've just said way too much, I'm not ready to process that much jargon or what have you, and if I spout jargon, please stop me and ask me what I meant, because I care more that you understand what I'm saying than that I'm expending oxygen. I forgot, because I should have put it in the slide. If you have a cell phone, like a smartphone, please make sure it's turned on. And the hashtag is #SeaSpin. I would love for real-time feedback if you guys want to tweet, this guy's really awful, or I'm really bored, or I just dropped my phone because I fell asleep. Those kinds of tweets help me learn how not to be that way, and are really helpful. So #SeaSpin on the Twitters, and every slide has my Twitter handle in the lower right-hand corner. I'm at Adam Direct. So, onto the stuff. Resource efficiency. This is a freeway. We're going to talk a lot about traffic flow, maybe. And this is a wasted freeway. If I'm the kind of manager who thinks in terms of how much money did I spend on the thing, and is the money I spent being utilized, I hate this image. This is horrible, because there's all kinds of asphalt and construction costs and money just sitting there baking in the sun. There are no cars traveling over my freeway. I want someone to use this stuff. And my dream state is a 100% utilized So who thinks, looking at this still image, that those cars are going 65 miles an hour? No, nobody thinks 65? Who thinks they're going 25? 10.
I'll bet they haven't even got it off the toes.
So we see this image, and we know from our intuitive experience as drivers that those cars are going somewhere between 0 and 5 miles an hour.
There's not enough brake lights there.
Yeah, well, it's because they're all in park, right? They've all taken their
They
foot
don't
off
have
the
the
gas.
engine to save gas.
So what does the efficiency nightmare look like in software? It's that guy. So resource efficiency nightmare, using resource ironically to describe that person, is the napping programmer. And when he wakes up, this happens. I love XKCD, so I have to use it if I can. My code's compiling. Alrighty then. So, a lot of times we want to try and have a better understanding of our software. We don't want to wait 2 years to find out that the guy was sleeping, so we bring in Agile. And then what happens? We bring in a legalistic framework. We bring in something that has lots of rules and lots of rituals, lots of roles. This guy's going to tell you how to stand up in your meetings. What are legalistic frameworks? Now it gets a little texty and more boring. They're prescriptive, right? We follow these rules, and agile hyperproductivity will be our reward. We know that in the old paradigm we had long lead times, lots of heavy, big design up front, and takes us 2 years to release anything. So in order to get things released every 2 weeks, we're going to agree that we will stand up every day for 15 minutes and we'll answer questions. We'll use some kind of a board or an excellent agile product management tool, for example. We'll do the rules.
Thanks for that. Not even a smirk.
So when we create the legalistic framework and adopt it, when people don't follow the rules, we castigate them. What do you mean you sat down and stand up? I'm not joking when I say that I have had Scrum Masters say, the thing I hate the most is when someone's sitting down and stand up. I'm maybe not a great Scrum Master because I don't care if you're sitting down and stand up. It's okay if your feet hurt that you're sitting down, or maybe our stand up is too long or boring and I don't want to stand up for it. We take pride in following those rules. Our team is the most agile team in the organization. We stand up for every meeting. We don't even have any chairs. Right? I had a VP who came in and he brought agile and he didn't even tell us it was agile. He just came in and said, we're going to do things differently. And then for some reason we weren't allowed to sit in meetings anymore. And every day we were supposed to get in this room for 15 minutes, even though there were like 25 of us on each team. And we were supposed to tell everybody what we did yesterday and what we're going to do today. But the meeting was only booked for 15 minutes, so another team of 25 people would be, clawing on the glass 14 minutes in, going, what are they doing? Are they getting fired?
Every day.
We had like 7 layoffs by then, so there wasn't a lot of safety. People weren't feeling really good when they were asked to tell everybody what they were doing yesterday in a big room. So we start to measure success based on compliance to the rules. So the focus shifts from delivering value to, are we doing the agile framework right? Are we doing things to the prescription? And if something doesn't go right, scrum bud. That didn't work because you guys sat down during your stand-up meeting. It didn't work because you weren't doing retrospectives correctly. You're supposed to demo to the product owner and you didn't do that. So anything fails, we have a really good list of, well, did you follow the rules? Did you adhere? And if you didn't, well, now we know why it didn't work out for you. I don't know if anybody's going to be able to read this, but it's one of my favorite Jim Benson quotes. I'll have to use it if I'm going to make a slide deck. In it, he says, we make plans and they scare us. The more scared we are, the more we try to tightly control our projects. This is like a bear hugging a water balloon. At some point, we control too much, hug too tightly, and it explodes all over us. Then we get frustrated and blame the balloon. So I feel that happens a lot in project management. Anybody experienced the tightly controlled workouts?
I try to forget it though.
Yeah, it's painful. Everybody's seen this. It's probably the most overused Gilbert comic in Agile talks. We're doing Agile programming. That means no more planning, no more documentation. We just start writing code and complaining. I'm glad it has a name. That was your training. So, anti-patterns. This came before my anti-pattern slide, but velocity is an effort metric. I run into this quite often. When I start talking about, the image is once upon a time, there was a poor schmuck named Sisyphus whose day job was pushing a rock up a hill for eternity. And then this says, everybody laugh. So, velocity is an effort metric. So who's familiar with Scrum velocity, with the concept of velocity? Yeah. So, what do we know about, does anyone want to offer up anything about velocity? We can start to Mr. Sterling.
Yeah, one of the things you shouldn't use that as a metric.
Right.
It's obvious that it's actually a planning tool.
Right.
And it only should be used by the team, and therefore I tell management that don't look at it.
Right. Does that work often?
Actually, if I give them something else, yes.
Yeah, right.
Don't think about breathing.
Sorry, yeah, right. Right. So, when I talk about reducing batch size, when I talk about let's get our stories really small and then just kind of stories moving through. Let's focus on the actual delivery of business value. A lot of times people go, well, I don't like that. They're huge stories. We have stories. One client had stories that were, they were doing the subtask tracking thing, and they had between 25 and 30 subtasks per story. And management was telling them, be working on as many tasks as possible.
Great.
Because we're doomed. You know, we have crippling dependencies, we need to get this stuff out. So if you guys are working on at least 5 tasks a day simultaneously, then more stuff will come out. And that didn't necessarily prove out. But there's more on that later. We focus on compliance to the framework over value, which I must have said earlier. Anyway, that's what I meant to talk about. Cargo cult, agile, essentially kind of what I described. You know, we're doing the things. Everybody here know what a cargo cult is? Anybody not know what a cargo cult is? So, in World War II, the Japanese and subsequently the Allied forces landed on these Melanesian islands that had never seen civilization before. And these completely primitive tribal cultures came to see that these military, modern, you know, deity-like, technologically advanced people showed up, and airplanes came and dropped huge barrels of wealth, just riches came pouring out of those people. And as time went on and the war ended, those people went away, and the Melanesians didn't know how to make the wealth come back. So they started worshiping the things that they associated with the wealth. So they started making like bamboo airplanes and carving rifles out of wood and marching in columns in sort of these big prayer ceremonies in hopes that it would summon back the riches that had been there. So when somebody says cargo cult agile, they mean we're doing all the things, sort of pantomiming the practices with the expectation that the riches will come.
It's kind of like our modern media.
Right. So, status reporting stand-up meetings. This is another hazard of the cargo cult agiles. I'm not a huge fan of the 3 questions. Everybody here heard of the stand-up meeting 3 questions? So, I think to echo Chris's earlier comment, this is not a status meeting, right? It wasn't designed to be a status meeting. Sorry, that's George.
So the problem is the third question, if taken serious, turns it not into a status.
Okay, because it turns it into a dialogue about the impediments.
Well, hopefully it turns it into other members of the team stepping up to make it so you're not blocked.
Right.
And that's usually the one that falls off.
Agreed. I totally agree. In fact, one of the things I complain about with this approach, which wasn't the first thing I was going to complain about, but the right time, just in time of complaining, is the sort of rote mindlessness of the process, right? And I have seen, and I know many others have, where somebody gives their stand-up report and they go, so yesterday I had this huge blocker, it was a huge pain, I worked on it pretty much all day, it's not cleared, and I'm working on it today, I'm no closer to a solution, I'm still blocked, no blockers. And then the next person. And there's a couple of really depressing things about that. One, that guy's not thinking. He's standing there doing the motions. I'm giving my status, I'm giving my status, and then the signal for the next person to give their status is when I say no blockers. The other sad thing is, every time I've seen that happen, nobody went, wait, what? Nobody said, wait, can I help you get unblocked? Or did you seriously just say no blockers? Because everybody's just waiting their turn to report their status to management or whoever's there listening to the stand-up. Or to the Scrum Masters taking notes and making notes so that he can put them up on SharePoint at the end of every day, which happens.
And the third point,
Yeah.
he was blocked all damn day.
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
Because he had to wait to give his blocking report until the next morning.
That too, right? There is, to speak to the resource efficiency of this ritual, if you misinterpret it like many people do, so this is intended to be a quick coordinating meeting. This is just, under the auspices that it's 6 or 7 of us sitting in the same space, we could hypothetically just rotate our chair around and go, hey, so what's going on today? And have an organic conversation that doesn't need to have a framework applied to it. So, I lost my train of thought because I speed. So, yeah, the thing that it says, resource utilization, is you typing is more important than that you're blocked. right? We have set aside this special 15-minute meeting so you can get unblocked tomorrow. We'll just bring it up at the next stand-up because everybody else is busy typing. They don't have time to unblock you right now, but it'll only be till tomorrow, which if you look at it compared to like the way things were before, it's a huge improvement. You're gonna get some help within a day if it works. But if you think about it in terms of how great things could be, it's a huge weight. It's a cube, right? It also sort of can implicitly state it's better for you to go bang your head against the wall by yourself until the next stand-up than you should interrupt somebody else. Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
No, what was funny was that, I don't know if everybody knows, I used to be a certified Scrum trainer, and I used to actually work with Jeff Sutherland quite a bit. And what was funny is the original meetup was based on something called Daily Huddle, right? And the Daily Huddle was a big practice. You didn't have Scrum or anything, you just did Daily Huddles because people didn't do that before.
Sure.
And then that was in the 90s. Well, what was interesting, what they were doing is at the daily meeting, they didn't necessarily go through these questions. The focus was really on the last two is, what's the biggest architectural change we can make that'll have the biggest impact of value to our customer? And that was what they talked about.
Right.
Each day.
Yeah, and
and so it was a coordinating meeting in terms of what we're all going to do together to make this the best day ever.
That?
Has anybody read the current issue of Time magazine? That talks a lot about the value of stand-ups in rescuing the healthcare.gov website, and I'm sure we'll be getting more of this soon.
Right. Well, and actually, from when I'm working with teams who are suffering from this, like, if people are just having healthy stand-ups and are helping each other out, this isn't a problem that I don't address it. I'm not just, like, religiously opposed to the concept of stand-up. But this is harmful in a bunch of places. If you look at this, and I digress a little, if you were to ask low trust, aliens, what's this meeting for? They would not say anything like what Jeff or Ken would say this meeting is for.
Entirely.
And so we apply the practice.
It would just go away completely when they
Yeah,
say
seriously. Don't do that. This Apple TV thing doesn't want me to bloviate. From here to bloviate. Come on, Apple TV. So, let's get this back going. So that's essentially one of the issues that I have with the concept. And when I'm working with teams that have that problem, I encourage taking a different approach and saying, if we're blocked, let's make it visible, and let's get help right now. If you need help, go get help. If something is blocked, like right before stand-up and it just happened, bring it up in stand-up. The more important things for us to sort out are impediments. So it doesn't, I kind of discourage everybody from rotely answering these questions. We can just ask, is anybody here blocked? No? All right. Does anybody need any help? No? Great. Is anybody going to mess with any architecture that's going to screw anybody else up? Nope. Cool. All right. Let's go back to work. Let's go do what we're going to do. And to get into storytelling, I had a team that was suffering a lot with this as a status meeting. They had a really hardcore dev lead who was acting as their scrum master. He was the guy who told me they couldn't go help other teams to do things because their developers were way too junior. They didn't have the aptitude. So there's sort of an implicit, there's better than and less than. And their stand-up meetings were, if you showed up late, you got fined $1. People showed up late all the time. Maybe they didn't love that meeting. They would stand there and say, Dev lead, yesterday I worked on these 5 things. Today I'm going to work on these 5 things, and I have no blockers. And he would say, enumerating each of those things, this thing should have been done 3 days ago. This thing should have been done yesterday. Why is it taking you so long to get that done? And you should pick up several more tasks today because this is ridiculous. You're way behind. And he would do that to pretty much everybody in the room. And after a while, I had not been allowed to work with that team by that guy. And their Scrum Master, the organization, the person in the organization said, your project manager, Scrum Master, this person said, please help, just come in, do something. And we had a training session. The best thing about it was the guy was super agile, right? Super agile, and so he didn't need to go. He just chose not to come because he already knows all of that. So in the training session, I gave everybody sticky notes and said, why don't you guys just write down what stand-up means to you now. And they said basically report status to the guy, get yelled at by the guy, get in trouble with the guy. You know, there was no happy in the sticky note things that they wrote down. And I said, what would you like to be different? Well, stop getting yelled at by that guy, stop reporting status to that guy. So it's kind of good that he come. I was ready for him to come because I had the manifesto preloaded so that I could point at the lack of stand-up meeting on it. So we changed the stand-up to what I described earlier. And the next stand-up, he was about 5 minutes late, which was about a minute too late for it to still be happening, because the team tested the stand-up right after that. The team wanted to go, well, is this really our thing? Like, do we actually control this? Can we have a stand-up and not say anything and not get yelled at? And I think if that guy came on time, they would have learned a different outcome. But because I was ironically late, I said, okay, everybody got any impediments? Crickets. Anybody need any help? Crickets. Anybody messed with architecture? All right, we're done. And everybody kind of looked at each other like, and then they went left. And then dude walked in the door and said, where is everybody? Stand-up's over. But it takes 40 minutes. Not today.
I do have one question for you. I agree with everything you said. One thing that I have observed, sometimes people, you know, they kind of like being blocked, right? It's kind of fun, right? You're working on a problem and you're cranking away, So sometimes the thing that the team needs to learn is to actually notice when they're blocked and be willing to go and ask for help.
Right.
And so, although it can be done very poorly, that is one of the purposes stand-ups can serve, is that opportunity to say, really?
Right.
Really you're not blocked? Are you sure you're not blocked? No, that kind of thing.
Yep, I hear you.
So what do you do about that?
Oh, so what I recommend for that is, so I'm big on keeping batch size really small. When I talk about batch size, I mean, let's keep stories to like something we can get done in like part of a day.
Yeah.
If it's gonna take us 2 or 3 days, it probably can be smaller. So if a story's cycle time is rocking up, right? If somebody's working on the same story for 4 days, they might be blocked. And as a team, as we see that our work usually flows thusly, and our work is flowing thusly minus, then we can start to say, hey, our flow is down.
But I guess my question is, do you have any time that as a team you see those things?
Ideally, you see them every single day because you have a really visible...
As a team.
As a team, you see them every single day. Yeah, I'm a huge advocate of extremely visible systems.
But wait, what I meant is, as a team, like everybody all at the same time.
Yes, because you have your stand-up meeting and you work and
So you
live
just
in
still
front
have a
of a
stand-up
board. Or even if you don't.
Or you have a status quo.
Yeah, even if you don't have stand-ups, you have a really clear, very visible board.
Sure.
That shows not just the tickets moving across the board, but you can also have your cumulative flow diagram, you can have your process control charts, you can have all that stuff visible so the team can see that something is off.
Or a staleness. Or individuals of the team can see that.
Right, but that's the team, right? I mean, they're all working together. But yeah, I would say the team is a collection of those people. That hopefully they're working together. If they're all working by themselves, that's a totally different issue to me. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm just trying to figure out if you throw away the stand-up and if you have any time when the individuals on the team together go and gather around the door and kind of say, hey, what's going on here, or blah, blah, blah. Or if you don't bother.
Yeah, I think it's all contextual, right? If you have a need to get people together thusly, then you should certainly do that. And if you already start with a stand-up meeting, then I don't say throw it away, but make it so the stand-up meeting isn't about reporting minutia, right? I should hit George first.
I just wanted to say, in your experience with XP, to me, when I'm pairing, it's clear when you're blocked.
Yeah. Once people are used to noticing, then it's not a problem at all.
Yeah,
Right,
that's
right.
a huge aspect
But I mean,
that I advocate
I mean,
too,
to
is working
me,
together.
one of the powers of XP and peer programming is the fact that when a pair is blocked for 15 minutes, it's an eternity.
Chris?
I was just gonna say, when, a lot of teams I work on, they stop needing this meeting as much at all.
Right.
It really is, like you said, once you learn what the indicators are, it becomes less useful to come together at a particular time. You tend to, mostly if you're co-located like that, you just turn around your seat and go, Ken, why don't you break the damn bills,
Or whatever.
Yeah. We talk about it and we say, say, well, how can we make that not happen again?
Right. And if this is a framework, like, I'm not big on shoot how read. People who are would say this is, you must do this when you are shoot. And if that's the case, then transitioning to ha and read should mean that you don't need this anymore, right? A lot of the Scrum rituals and roles, as far as I know from other CSTs that I associate with, that I respect, are transitory. They're not meant to be forever.
Isn't that what ha is? You're supposed to question the
Sure.
rules?
Yep. Jeff?
Yeah, I was just thinking that if you're designing for kind of a typical flow rate and you see anything languishing, the question is, does the team notice? How can you make the team notice?
Right.
If they're too self-absorbed, I think to me, the point of the stand-up or even the board is anything languishing.
Okay.
But sometimes the way we represent things, maybe we don't necessarily signal that, okay, this has actually been there for 4 days.
Right.
If it's not your work, will you notice that it's been there 4 days?
Right, and subsequently I will be talking a little bit about that, which is one thing I hate about slide decks is like, if I was using stickies, I'd say, oh, we should talk about mission command right now, move the sticky and talk about it. But I have a slide for that.
Okay.
It's my least favorite thing. Yeah.
Oh, sure
We
you
need
do.
a better tool.
Yeah.
It's called Reveal JS. You can have like.
These are pretty, keep it all.
So, splitting teams. Similar huge retailer had were advised that they should have teams that are who's heard of 2 pizza teams? Who hasn't heard of 2 pizza teams? So 2 pizza teams is, I don't know who invented it. It probably was Jeff or somebody. Essentially, it's a heuristic for optimal team size that says 7 plus or minus 2 people, or they should be satiated if they have a meal of 2 large pizzas. So. Huge enterprise organizations are not always tooled thus that the best solution for them is to have 2 pizza teams. Sometimes bigger teams make sense because you have bigger systems that require more people to work on them. And ignoring that context can create crippling webs of dependencies. The teams that I worked with that suffered with the difficult dev leads, I always say it's the system, not the people. That guy had a director pressuring him, who had a VP pressuring him, and that team was working on a tiny horizontal slice of the system that was dependent on many other 2 pizza teams to be able to deliver anything. So stuff doesn't come out, because even if we hit and get things done, the things we need in order to make it go live don't exist, or that team decided to work on something else and doesn't plug into the thing that we're working on. Huge architecture team was supposed to be migrating this massive platform over to a single unified platform, and they weren't done after a really long time. So a lot of these teams were building to mocks and stubs. So they were saying, well, we assume that the platform will be like this. So that we can stay busy, we'll build something that plugs into a thing we assume it'll be like, and then it'll plug in whenever it's done. So that's rework, all kinds of undesirable things may come of that. So, mostly done complaining. What can we do about that? I'm a big fan of limiting WIP and visualizing the flow of value. The of value part is a really big deal. WIP is work in progress. Limit your work in progress. Excessive work in progress is the enemy of flow. Everybody, I think, has seen I Love Lucy. I reduced the size of my deck by not putting the video in, even though it's classic. In this frame, we have Lucy and Ethel, mouths full of bonbons, totally overwhelmed, but they've cleared the conveyor belt. And the managers come in to say, faster, which is awesome. We got to keep them utilized. They already have too much to do, so let's make them go faster. So, if we measure busyness, we'll create more busyness. There are a lot of assumptions that a lot of cultural issues that condescending Wonka is bringing up in me when I see this. And that's sort of, if you're beleaguered and you're tired and you're just absolutely spent, then you must be doing something more virtuous. That you're better because you're dying. You're not supposed to be at ease at work. Work is where you're busy and miserable. So, Little's Law. Hand wave, hand wave. essentially, the more stuff we try to do at the same time, the longer it takes us to get that stuff done. So cycle time goes up, directly proportionate to how much work in progress we endeavor to accomplish. So I want to talk about failure demand, because a bunch of the slides I was working on talked about failure demand like everybody knows what failure demand is. Sorry.
I have some ask question, because I might have been just very fortunate in my career.
Yeah.
But I haven't had as many of those issues that you've talked about.
That's awesome.
Well, I was wondering how many people have.
Good question.
I have had like one job that I could say was, actually had some of those nuances, like actually people watching for busyness.
Yeah.
Only one.
That's
out of
awesome.
15 or something.
Does what I'm talking about resonate with anybody?
Hey,
It's
I
okay if
worked
it
on a
doesn't.
project that the only measurement for work was how many defects were outstanding. If you had no defects outstanding, you weren't doing anything.
I can think of a lot of projects where everybody was scheduled, completely filled in for this whatever time frame. Everybody was completely filled in, and whenever it came down to crunch time, nobody can help anybody else out because they were too busy getting their own stuff done. But I think there's a lot of things that resonate. And I don't think I've seen that. I haven't seen where that wasn't the case, where people were doing a lot of time up front scheduling projects that way.
I worked for a big telecom one where the focus, one of the focus was on the status reports, and all the project managers had to bring in the status report with the green, yellow, red
Oh, yeah.
symbol. And what would happen if one was red is that the stakeholder would get quite strong emotional reaction to that. And then later on, an email would go out to the GM or the VP, and then the project manager would get called into somebody's office, and it became not very safe to report on status. So you can see what happens, right? Red becomes yellow, and yellow becomes green, and people get focused on what the color is and the busyness of creating the status reports instead of what the real issues and problems are.
And I've actually seen both of those quite often, but I never was part of the company. I was consulting to try to get them to change that. So
That was actually one company, wasn't a big company, but we had hundreds of customers. It was a startup that, was going to the next level. But every product was a single programmer. And conversation/collaboration was considered dysfunction. There was no speech. The only time anyone ever talked to someone else was when they went to take a walk,
That makes me want to talk about
We didn't
testing.
talk about code,
Yeah.
heaven forbid.
And test policies are born that way, right? You have, I had a VP in an assessment I was doing, and I run lead copies with teams when I do my assessments, and I work with clients. And in the lead copies, people write stuff down on sticky notes they would never say out loud. Like, it's raw, and people really just come out and say what's bothering them. And a common thread among everybody was collaboration is frowned upon. We're not allowed to work together. We're not allowed to talk to each other. And when I'm sitting with the VP, and I said, evidently collaboration's not permitted. It's frowned upon. He was shocked. It was like I had called him out, and he had no idea. He did not know that he had created this environment. And he said, no, I absolutely love collaboration. I, in fact, noticed that when two people work together, usually the output is better. So I don't know where they got that idea. Now, there's a few problem children. And those guys, see a couple of those guys talking about the football game, I gotta go tell them to get back to work. And I'm like, well, do you understand that everybody saw that? And that you have positional authority, you can decide whether these people's families continue to get an income? And when you tell those problem children to get back to work, they create a tacit policy. They go, our VP doesn't want us to talk to each other. And he had no idea. So luckily for me, he didn't send me out the door at the moment. He said, well, that's a really good point. Sorry, Joe.
No. I was just gonna say that recently I've worked for a number of large organizations. And the exception to what I'm about to say was Google. And that is that the large organizations have all these minutia rules and all this jazz, and they try to drive productivity.
Right.
Whereas the small organizations, they actually seemingly trust the developer that they're actually working. Yeah. And so it's like, well, if the developer's taking longer, then he might need some help,
Right.
as opposed to getting out the whip.
Right.
I have a question in response to that.
Mhm.
Do you see, you said large and small, and I'm wondering if you feel that equates to public and private. And I'm just asking the question if with public companies, they don't have as much skin in the game, and therefore there's less motivation than maybe small private companies who might have more skin in the game and more motivation to collaborate and do well.
So I'll just say that my observation is that it depends upon if you're treating the people as smart as opposed to cogs. If you're treating them as smart, then you don't have to get the whip out. You don't have to drive and drive and drive. And it isn't. What's that?
It's a cultural issue.
It's a cultural issue.
Well,
Are you saying you observe it more in large companies than small companies?
Well, like I said, except for Google, which loves developers, I mean, literally, I mean, to the point where the project manager and I went to lunch and she said, I can't drive the project here because every programmer excuse is legitimate.
From my related experience working at large companies, especially right now, I'm seeing some talk about, accelerate, drive faster, drive change. It's from a corporate, and the public company and the shareholder driven mentality is, what are you doing for me today? And the short-term gain mentality tends to come up as a pressure, much more so I would expect than a private company. So it's not necessarily the size, but that cultural mentality driven from the CEO down is a risk factor.
I think it's also standardization of processes.
Yes.
You try to measure
Yes.
anything, try to apply the same measurement to everybody, and you end up with some weird measurements applied to the wrong people.
Which is more likely to happen at scale, right? So
Scale,
as
yeah.
organizations get bigger and bigger, and you cross that Dunbar number, now you have much more complex or complicated interactions to manage. And every little thing that goes wrong, you start having one hammer, and that's rules. So we apply rules. Hey, a legalistic framework, perfect. That's just the kind of thing we want. At that client, when I got rid of the 3 questions stand-up, the guy came to the second training, because there were 2 teams he was on. He came to the second training. He was not quiet. And he yelled at me and said I was doing hybrid agile. And what if I Google search, will I see 3 questions for stand-up? And yeah, you'll find all kinds of odious stuff on Google, no problem. You'll find lots of wrong things there too. And essentially, I had executive backing at that point. And he said, is everybody going to have to do this? Is the whole organization going to do this? And I said, if they have this problem, that's what they're going to do. And a bit of an irony is, which speaks to, I think, your point, is that when this team had a lot of success, the transition organization said, you got rid of the 3 questions and they had success, I would like you to put that on SharePoint and make it our codified whole process. So every time I did something that worked, they wanted me to codify it and put it on their big SharePoint and turn it into the organizational policy. And it's not irrational. It makes sense in that frame of mind.
And part of it is that as your organization gets large, you look for ways to systematize stuff, because otherwise you'd have an army of middle managers.
And you should. You absolutely should do that. But you should do that with some maybe better tools.
And I think one of the things is we tend to focus on the activity, not the outcomes.
Right.
Right.
And that's what we're codifying as activity.
Mhm.
And so if you codify the outcomes, though, you tend to focus on, are they delivering outcomes?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, Elizabeth Hendrickson, her Agile Acid Test was sort of my North Star for Agile, and she, back in the day, I've modified it a little bit to continually improving delivery of value at a sustainable pace while responding to change. If you're achieving those things, I would say that you're Agile with a little a, that you are doing the things that will bring your organization greater success, at least tactically. And I don't care if you stand up in meetings. I don't care if you have retrospectives. Those things don't matter if you're able to achieve those outcomes. So let's talk about failure domain. Am I till 6:30 or 7?
You started at 6:30.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
until 7:30 or
7:30, yeah.
Okay, so, lots to do.
Start leaving, sorry.
Failure demand. Who here has heard of failure demand? Okay, so failure demand comes from John Seddon and the Vanguard method. I think it's a great concept with a terrible name because my clients would probably not like to hear that they're producing failure, and in the negative sense. So traditional management thinking treats all demand as equal. There's work to be done, and there's people who do the work. Failure demand is demand that originates from failure to have done something right in the first place. So,
Fancy word for rework?
kind of, right? It's a kind of thing, right? Not all productivity is desirable, right? So
They called it rework. It made
Right.
it really simple.
it can be rework, it can be other things, though. Failure demand is not just one thing. It's also the canonical example is a call center, which ironically also has rework. We don't see the actual value flowing through the system, so hypothetically we're taking 1,000 calls a month. Let's outsource it. We outsource it. We're taking 50,000 calls a month, 50x boost in productivity. The truth of the matter is people are calling back 5 times or 50 times, right? So essentially our customers are not better off. Our customers are worse off. But if we're just measuring that productivity, then we'd say, hooray. Pat.
Yes, that place that tracked you by defects. I fixed 5 of them without them being reported.
Right.
I was criticized for it because it ruined their effectiveness.
Stats, absolutely. So the product development example I use is velocity for bugs. So I see it more than I would like to, and that's, we did 5 bug fixes, so we got 5 points for those bug fixes. Well, but that's failure demand. Hypothetically speaking, you could produce only defects. You could spend all of your time making points out of bug fixes and never deliver a new piece of value, and from the manager who's looking at your metrics be growing that velocity hockey stick up into the right. Infinite productivity, yeah. The Dilbert, I'm going to go code myself a mini now. Right? Those things exist, right? But we don't talk about failure demand. A little bit on the velocity as effort metric. The team, a different team, they had huge overhead. They were doing the most tasks per story. They were tracking and trying to have as many items in process at a time. Had got yelled at by their director at one point. Just to show them, as an organization, we're tracking value in stories completed. We're tracking value in velocity points delivered, which is it's not what I would do, but I don't get to pick everything I would do. So I throw a burn down chart on the wall. As much as I hate whipping people with burn down charts, I just wanted somebody to see that the things they were working on was not giving us any value. Their burn downs looked like they pulled 65 points one iteration, delivered 19. So the next iteration they pulled an extra 40 more points to 105 points, and then delivered about 20. And they just kept doing that. They just kept pulling more and pulling more and pulling more. And I kept saying, why do you keep pulling more work if you haven't finished the work that you started before? And they go, well, because that stuff's 90% done. It'll be finished like that. And so I said, why don't we look at the burn down chart? And the burn down chart looks like that. And it looks like a plateau that doesn't go anywhere. And the team says, that's not fair. That burn down chart doesn't show all the work that we're doing. We should make a chart like that that burns down tasks. Because I have finished 150 tasks in the last several weeks. If that chart showed tasks, it would be fair, and it would show how much we've done. But they hadn't done anything. So velocity, without the understanding of failure demand, can be abused thusly. So, pitfalls of ignoring failure demand. Very narrow range, I think, of age that gets this slide. So protecting silos from failure demand creates more. By that I mean developers need to be typing, so they shouldn't be fixing bugs, or they shouldn't be dealing with customer calls, or they shouldn't be dealing with operations issues. Creates dumpster teams. Dumpster teams, in order to keep developers typing at a maximum utilization, create teams to absorb the failure demand caused by keeping teams typing at a maximum utilization. The teams often have unlimited WIP and must consume an unending stream of demand, failure demand. This also hides the problems from the people creating them. It's not the developer's fault. He's doing the best that he knows how in the system that he's been put in. He's working his ass off to get that velocity out. He's working his ass off to deliver those story points. And in the end, especially as I didn't get a crap J-curve on here, especially as quality diminishes and technical debt mounts and greater amounts of rework occur, somebody starts to say, our developers' velocity is going down. They're doing less because there's all these QA issues. There's all these live side issues. You know, ops is going to need, you know, or the operational needs of this organization need to be met. They shouldn't do that. Their job is to tighten. They have to make as much code as possible. Let's create an ops team. Those guys will do all of the operational work. They're going to handle all the live site issues. They're going to upgrade all the servers. They're going to see, you know, basically every performance problem that dev creates, ops will just find a way around it. Same thing with QA, rapid response teams. Chris?
So what's interesting about this is you create a whole bunch of new set of tools as well.
Yeah.
So now it becomes more complicated to do everything.
Right.
So in operations, Bash became very strong, and then a whole bunch of other tools that are based on what operations would use those same things. Now we have Chef and things like that coming back with the DevOps movement. It's code.
Right. Yeah.
And it totally changed back to, well, it's not as complicated as it used to be, so we can do this.
Right.
So one of the things, when you said dumpster team, I was thinking, gosh, this model seems like it applies pretty well to a sustained engineering team.
Right.
Gosh, you have the core development team that does everything. They introduce as many bugs as they ended up doing, so just to get the product out. And then you have a sustained engineering team that deals with cleanup and stuff like that. I agree with you in part that, yeah, you want to make sure that there's good feedback, and just because they're slowing down in velocity doesn't mean it's a bad thing. But there's also some cases, or especially some situations or organizations, where a sustained engineering team is absolutely the right choice. So what's your thoughts on that other side of the coin?
Right. Sorry, I had to draw one because I can't help myself. So
OCD is a terrible thing.
This is Jim Benson. This is a crap J-curve. The vertical axis is how much crap we make, how poor the quality is, and the horizontal axis is the time to deadline. And in some ways, 2-week iterations cause this to happen every 2 weeks. Oh shit, we got to get it out tomorrow. It's the end of the sprint. Blah, 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 get it out. And then we give it to QA the last day, and then they don't remotely open it to test that. Which I've seen.
Kind of looks like an MM1Q distribution for 100% capacity utilization.
Yeah, that's fairly reasonable. Yeah, I think I do actually have one coming. The answer to that question is always, it depends. Context is king with me. I will always say, depending on the context, that may be the case. I am extremely reticent to assume that context is common, though. I think it's usually going to be in the best interest of the organization for people who create to be responsible for the things that they create, instead of someone else being that. So
Yeah, we have a habit of just letting it roll downhill, and
yeah,
you should at least
That's what-
contain what you're letting roll.
right.
That's what the flush lever's for, to get the downhill.
Yeah, I'm going to strike that one down.
So value demand is the other thing. Failure demand is the one kind of demand, value demand is the other thing. Value demand is demand created by the customer. Value demand is why we're here. We want to produce value demand, increase revenue, give us economic outcomes. The failure demand gets in the way of us doing that. So, a thing I like to talk about with regard to like cumulative flow diagrams is to visualize your failure demand. If you fixed 3 bugs, have another line on the chart that shows you, I worked on failure demand today. We had this much technical debt consequence. And if you're starting to see 2 lines, one cumulative flow of value demand and one cumulative flow of failure demand, you can see how they're impacting each other. When one goes up, the other one's probably going to level off because you have a finite number of people.
So you have to be a little careful not to equate value with bug-free code.
Oh yeah, totally. I agree. So when I talk about failure demand, I mean rework and that kind of stuff. You can deliver value that has bugs in it that don't necessarily need to occupy your like, all bugs are not bad.
Well,
I would not say all bugs, well, no bugs are good, but not all bugs need to be resolved.
Exactly.
Right? So a type of pain that I've seen is lots of, a little too much escalation, a little too much focus on the customer, right? We've got one customer who can't get through checkout, and the phone support people got them through manually, but we've got to escalate this as a priority one escalation. The engineering team has to stop working on what they're doing so they can figure out why that one customer got delayed. So that's creating a bunch of failure demand where you don't need it, right? You could say, well, evidently we just expedite everything. So this is why failure demand is happening. But I totally agree. Value demand is challenging though, because what is value is a difficult question to ask and answer. Spoiler alert, I will not be defining value. It's hard, right?
I'm leaving.
Sorry. Maybe I will define value.
I bet you would if we were paying you better.
That's right. I would say it depends. So value though, I stole this image off the inner tubes like I did most of them. And this image I saw associated with cost of delay. Who's not heard of cost of delay? So everybody's heard of cost of delay.
Put the book up. I see you have it up there.
A book? It's like a rule. This book? We don't actually have it. You have it? Yeah. So I like cost of delay as a proxy metric for value, as Don Reinertson recommends. I think having an understanding that when we choose to do something, we displace something else, and looking at the opportunity costs of the things that the choices we make is a healthier way to manage flow. It's a healthier way than looking at productivity metrics like velocity or trying to make people put out, oh, we did 50 features. Well, who cares? Nobody paid us anything for them. So as an organization, economic outcomes probably are kind of high on our list. So we can like keep paying people and stuff, and maybe even thrive and make lots of money. So strategic intents. Has everybody heard of Stephen Bungay? Yeah, he's awesome. Stephen Bungay wrote a book called The Art of Action. He's coming up. Essentially, he talks about mission command. I'll talk about it later. But strategic intents, to me, need to be made visible across the organization. We need to eliminate these executive silos where some guy who gets paid a lot of money theoretically knows why we're here, and then everybody beneath him obfuscates that into some kind of siloed metric that they drive their people to. Instead, I would like people to know why we're here and then be trusted to make decisions based on that. So that means clear priorities are essential to distributed decision making. Lots of managers, executives, middle managers, directors, when I talk to them about, how much do you like having to be the nanny for the people on the teams, none of them are super excited about that. Like they have a feeling there's maybe something else they should be doing other than saying, why didn't you guys ship this thing? When we ask them about, well, what are the priorities? Like, well, you get a number of a distribution of responses. Sometimes they change all the time. One company I work with had the CEO expedite, and I mean like, this thing on our website is the wrong shade of green. Fix it now. And everybody stop what you're doing and get it right, because the CEO saw it was one Pantone over of green. And when that stuff happens, I attribute it to people in very high up positions doing very low granular work because there isn't trust and because they don't feel like they can distribute that decision making. And they can't until people know why we're here, to make smart decisions. That relaxed dude is Stephen Bungay. He wrote a book called The Art of Action. In it, he talks about military things, which I know a lot of people associate with command and control. But back in the Prussian days of Field Marshal von Moltke, this guy von Moltke, he came up with this mission command structure, which is essentially we communicate our intents across the organization, the military organization. It's used in the Marine Corps today. The Marine Corps doctrine dictates that every Marine should know the clear strategic intents of people two steps above the chain from them. Both their commander and his commander, you should know what those guys' intents are. And a big reason for this approach is because of the emergent nature of war. And it's kind of analogous to the emergent nature of creative knowledge work. A guy sitting in an ivory tower, a general, can't go down and tell, lieutenant on the radio, go in here, go up that hill, turn left, and take that bunker, when that lieutenant says, oh yeah, no, we're all gonna die if we do that. If that guy has to go, well, all right guys, let's go all die. That doesn't work out tactically either. Like if you're just a total jerk who doesn't think it's a bad thing for all those guys to die, you didn't achieve your goal and you just lost a bunch of guys. So in a nutshell, mission command is make your strategic intents clear and empower people to lower down in the command structure to make decisions based on that. Stephen Bungay said the organization is not a machine, but an organism, a set of human relationships, and I couldn't agree more. When I talk about humanistic systems, part of that is that we're not a mechanistic structure, we're not cogs in a machine, we're human beings with relationships that can either be shut down by too much control or can be brought to the table to help enable us. There's a guy did a talk about the internet is my religion. If you Google the internet is my religion, it's a really powerful talk. But I genuinely believe that, as a species, our superpower is our social ability, our ability to band together and solve problems that none of us could solve as individuals. And that when we treat people like cogs in a machine, we rob them of that power, and we rob our organization of the value of that power. So in order to have high autonomy, we need high alignment, which is essentially what I've been talking about with regard to mission command. If we create autonomy without alignment, then we're just going to have a bunch of people running off various directions and not succeeding to our strategic intent, which will not only make us less successful as an organization, it will make those people pretty miserable because I didn't throw the Snidely Whiplash slide that I wanted to put in there. But people come to work to do their best. I genuinely don't believe that sociopaths are a significant enough percentage of the population for us to design our systems around them. So I think we should design our systems around the basic assumption that people, and maybe it's different in different cultures, but I think a lot of their self-esteem is tied up in their profession and what they do for a living and how good they are at their job. And they don't come to work and say, I'm going to come to work and not do anything today, or how can I screw everything up today, ha ha ha. I don't think that ever happens. So enough that we should care about it. So let's assume that's the case, and then create a system with lots of clarity that gives lots of alignment, and then trust those people to creatively solve problems for us. This guy, he wrote this book and a couple others. The Principles of Product Development Flow. I'm going to talk a little bit about it. I love this book. It's not more exciting after the title, but it's full of great stuff. It's not almost nothing explodes. There's not any car chase scenes, but it's full of just gold. There's so much great stuff in that book that I strongly recommend reading it. Back to utilization, this chart is in the book, and it shows this utilization curve, and that our queues, our waiting times more than double as utilization moves from 80 to 90%, and double again as it moves from 90 to 95%. So exponentially beyond 80%, our wait times go up. And I don't intend to go into detail about process cycle efficiency because I only have so much time. I'm already with the fire hose tonight. But this thing, eliminating these wait times, has by far the greatest potential for impact in changing an organization's effectiveness. This is strategic level flow management, not team level practices. Teams are a very small percentage of the total value stream. The process cycle efficiency stuff essentially says that from the moment lead time starts, which is we think we want this thing, to the moment we actually give it to a customer and get money, approximately no greater than like 5% of that time is spent with people actually doing something. People actually touching something, writing code, talking to a customer, testing, deploying. It's less than 5%. 95% of that time is wait times. I do big value stream mapping exercises with organizations, and they've sort of bought into this tactical promise of we're going to be agile now. We're going to release every 2 weeks. So now actually our lead time is 2 weeks. It's going to be awesome. We're going to get stuff every 2 weeks. And when you run the value stream map and say, well, when did you start to think you needed this? When did demand start? And they put it up on the butcher paper. And then what happened? Handoffs, waiting, then when did it get released? And we're looking at lead times like 4 to 6 months. And then, wait a minute, but that's not agile. You're supposed to get every 2 weeks. Well, no, it took 6 months to get from you thought you want this to you have it. And almost none of that time was we were typing code or talking to a customer. So if nothing else, if you gain nothing else out of this, I hope that you'll look into the process cycle efficiency, queues, utilization curves, because this stuff, I think, has the greatest potential for improving the future of work. Because once we realize that our system is the chief cause of delay, we'll stop abusing people to try and make them go faster.
I totally agree with this one. There's actually a whole bunch of companies that you can point to, like GitHub, and trying to think of other, I've been working
No, Jitsi.
But anyways, there's a whole bunch of companies that actually do this, and they have reduced their lead times to, days, hours, minutes, and they do things like continuous deployment. And it's actually why I got out of CST in Scrum, was not because Scrum's bad, it's because it actually isn't the biggest win.
Right.
The biggest win is actually how you manage your flow through your organization.
But Scrum sells. Command is itself.
It's still good for your teams, but
Oh, totally. One of the challenges, though, is that management reads it as a systems level solution, right? And if you think that your whole problem is team execution, then you're going to go, all right, then we just need a tactical solution.
Yeah. So Hawkins Forest has come out with a really great story. It's called Red Brick Cancer. And you can go to his website and
Who's
Google
Hawkins?
Red Brick Cancer.
HAKANFORSS. If you just Google Red Brick Cancer, it's a really good talk.
Hawkins uses Legos for his presentations, and he shows it's about 2 women who have cancer, and it's their story of going through the Swedish medical healthcare system. And he uses a green Lego to represent an actual value added, like they made an appointment and had a mammogram or whatever that day, and then the red bricks indicate all the wait time that they went through.
It's great.
And it
Watch
shows an example of 2 different women, and I encourage everybody to go see it. I think it's a great way to show, to demonstrate flow efficiency and wait time with people. They can get it with that kind of visual.
Uh-oh, got a beach ball. So this is supposed to be a video that we would not necessarily have audio on, but I think, oh, no, it's going. So we have no audio. So this is my rules are waste slide that I stole from Dominica because it's awesome. These are cars sitting at a light. Right now all we hear is the cars running their engines. I'll be the closed caption for the hearing.
You have to speak with a British accent.
Oh, I know, right? No, I'm not going to do that. I'm videotaping myself. I have to be a little self-conscious. So there they're going. There's still no audio. This is where we get to see the traffic is moving because the light turned red, and in a single continuous shot we pan over and they went to the next light.
My word.
So now they're waiting for another light. And then this kid is talking about how the lights are horrible, that it just takes forever to get anywhere, and we're seeing this sign that says that they're going to turn the lights off and see what happens if they just eliminate the stoplights. And they're talking to this lady, and she's saying, I don't think that anybody's going to get out of anybody else's way. It's going to be a huge disaster if they turn off the lights. They're not just going to dovetail in, she says, and this is with no lights.
But they're all driving on the wrong side of the street.
Yeah, that's true. That's what makes it worse.
Britain doesn't have any, in context, Britain doesn't have any concept of one-way stops.
Right, right.
This is actually really foreign
Yeah.
way of thinking about traffic.
So this is her saying, I've beaten my own hat. I told you guys that this would never work and it'd be a huge disaster, but here it is. Everybody's moving along just fine. I'm completely flabbergasted. She's literally, her words were, I've beaten my hat. So she's saying it used to take 20 minutes to get from that end of town to this end of town, and now it takes less than 5 every time. There's more to the video, but we're running out of time. This lady is also amazed that they removed rules and things got better. People didn't behave like jerks.
For a while.
Because most of them are not.
For a while. But then you go.
So, this is create Slack.
That's what command and control thinks people are doing.
That's right. So 3 types of Slack that I identify. I'm sure there are a multitude kinds of Slack.
That's another one.
Snack is a kind of Slack, yeah. So variability buffer, learning and innovation. Slack as a variability buffer. This is a video that's meant to show something else, but luckily for me, since we have no audio, I can pretend that it's whatever I want it to be. This is a traffic study that they did where they made cars get in a big circle and drive around. And it's just another great traffic metaphor. Man, this whole presentation thing is not doing so well. Oh, is that what it looks like when it just bars? Why doesn't technology work? I
You
never
don't
use-
have a big enough hammer.
No, technology doesn't work because of how we manage it. I am a hammer. So that didn't work. So flow trumps waste, value trumps flow. This is the lean decision filter. The thing you would have seen is a circle of cars on one track trying to go 30 kilometers an hour, and a random traffic jam that occurs within it. And the bit that I would be pointing out is while there's sufficient space between cars, they're moving well. As soon as one car stops, they all jam up, and it becomes this continual wave of traffic jam. Speaks to the freeway metaphor I was talking about earlier. Who's ever been sitting in traffic on a freeway in complete gridlock and thought what we really need here are more cars? Part of the reason for that utilization curve is we lose all our slack to absorb variability. If you're driving down the freeway and you have 4 car lengths in front of you, and the car in front of you slows down to 2 car lengths and then speeds back up, the whole of flow is not impeded. If you're all bumper to bumper and someone hits their brakes, everybody stops. It becomes an immediate traffic jam. And this applies to product development flow too. So this is a graphic for flow trumping waste. We have these counterintuitive ramp signals that I'm sure everybody's had to wait in a line of. And the purpose of them is to not overload the whip limit of the freeway. By doing it this way, cars are able to merge while traffic continues flowing to a point. It's still better than just having a backed up on-ramp and a stop freeway. So what's my metaphor for value trumps flow? When we're sitting in traffic, whether it's moving quickly or not, and we see a fire truck, we recognize that as an important thing. We go, and I know that we have rules to punish us if we don't do it, but I'm guessing most people have empathy and get out of the way of the ambulance or fire truck not because they don't want to get a ticket. I'm imagining that most people are doing it because somebody's house is burning down, and you would like that solution to come as quickly as possible. One of the problems that we have in software is everything is invisible. Jim Benson talks about why whip limiting doesn't make intuitive sense to people, and that's because if we were working in a factory and somebody came and brought transmissions to you, and they made a transmission and they dropped it on your desk, and they made another transmission, they dropped it on your desk, your office would fill up with transmissions pretty quickly, and it becomes abundantly obvious that that guy should probably stop bringing you transmissions, because you're getting loaded up on stuff you can't do anything about. We often expedite things that are not bright red and covered in flashing lights. So things we can do within our organization to create explicit policies, to create service level agreements and classes of service so that we know we know what things are bright red and flashing and what things are not, so that we can only delay the value demand for these things and not for everything, we'll be a lot better off. So another example, and this is a lot of text, I apologize. I started doing some research because I was thinking about Slack as a means for improving flow, and I thought about firehouses. Firemen, obviously famous for putting out burning houses, but also kind of known for their culinary exploits. People know firemen have big lavish meals and they clean the fire trucks and they spend a lot of time in the firehouse never putting out a fire. And people don't seem to have a problem with that. People aren't saying, well, firemen, we're paying them. They should be putting out fires 24/7. Because the cost of delay on a fire truck is incredibly high. If that fire truck is occupied, 100% utilized, and your house is on fire, you really want them to come put your house out, or your city out, your family out. Cost of delay in emergency services is incredibly high, and nobody's questioning it. In software and business, cost of delay still matters. It's not like just because we're not putting out fires and saving lives that delays are unimportant to us. And I think if you were to go to business leaders or business owners and say, how do you feel about delay? Would you like stuff to go out more slowly? They probably would not say yes. But they also might say, I want everybody working 100% of the time. So this is interesting. I won't read the whole thing to you. The crux of it is, if a unit is not available 80% of the time, it's not reasonable to expect that unit to perform at the 80th percentile. Poor availability negatively influences response times. That's true in product development flow or any other kind of flow. If you're not available to work on something, it's going to take you longer to work on something. Another interesting bit to this is that when we look at, I hope it was in this, they look at probabilistic forecasting. They don't just randomly say 80%. They say, this came from a Lincoln, Nebraska fire and safety engine optimization report. They look at the call volumes, the different times of year, all of the different environmental variables that impact the need for emergency services. And they staff so that they have 80% slack in those worst case circumstances. Because it's never okay for it to take 8 minutes for you to get a fire truck if the standard is 4. So we're not doing this stuff in software like I think we should be. I think we would be so much better off if we use probabilistic forecasting instead of asking people to guess how many points they can do in 2 weeks. If we actually looked at the different types of work that we do and the outcomes, the economic outcomes that they produce. If we looked at our portfolio as an array of things in which our organization can choose to invest, and if we invest in 3 things at the same time, we consume the opportunity cost of all 3 of them until they all 3 go out. So WIP limiting, focusing on portfolio prioritization becomes intuitive if we start taking a bit more of a data-driven approach to how we make our decisions. Slide for learning. That's my fry meme. It's really easy to tell if programmers are working, their fingers are bashing on a keyboard. That's why pairing is such a horrible idea. My friend Jabe, CTO of Library Corporation, used to tell his people he created a flow-based system with lots of slack. He told his engineers, I would like you to be seen reading a book at work. A quick thing about lunch and learns. I hate them. I hate the idea of a lunch and learn because it sends the message, we don't care about this. We're not willing to pay you to learn this. We want you to take your lunch break and learn it. It's essentially, please donate your time to our business because this doesn't matter enough to us to pay for it. So yeah, read a book, spend some time visibly not working. This comes from a very funny video from, if you Google...
This is pair programming?
Spooning. It's spooning. If you Google pair programming spooning, you'll get this video. It's very funny. Capability balancing, I forget the term that Chris Matz made up for it, but it's not great. It sounds like firing people, so I don't say it that way. I like capability balancing because it's not firing people. Essentially, it's to me, everybody wants to hire the magic bullet guy. Everybody wants the super specialist, amazing guy who's awesome at the thing. But nobody's willing, because of their resource efficiency mindset, to invest in making that guy with the guys they already have. And capability balancing, to me, is where you have an explicit policy within the organization that if you have like a really senior guy, his chief job is to teach other people how to be like him. His job is not to sit down and write code, because a couple things happen. That guy goes off in a corner, he writes a lot of maybe really elegant, really complex code that all those junior guys don't understand, and they interact with it later and they break it, or they don't know what it means. They can't maintain it, he leaves, they're screwed. Those things happen, but more importantly, those guys don't learn how to do what he does. And I would rather he made his brilliant code contributions through a junior pair partner. Don't write the code, sit with the other guy and have him write the code while you guide him through it and teach him what your thinking is. I also recommend doing this for testers. Dev test pairing in an acceptance test-driven development kind of paradigm where we get together and have a story workshop and hash out the details of the story, and then from that point moving into more of a one-piece flow, so there's no QA handoff. You have a dev and a tester get together, and the developer can express the narrative of what they're thinking about as they turn those acceptance tests into code. the tester can help the developer learn how to be a more skilled tester, we start to balance our capability across the board. Testers learn how to be better production coders learn how to be better testers, everybody wins. So, capability balancing. Lean coffee. All of the teams that I work with usually volunteer to have lean coffees once a week to talk about process. There's
Because they're not willing to invest in the time for you to do that?
I would love to say that was the case, and I've certainly anchored them in there. But I just think that along with that clarity across the organization, everybody being responsible for our process should be another cultural policy that we adopt, cultural norm. So to do that, we have to make time to talk about process. People should get together and say, this is pissing me off, this thing isn't working for me, let's have a weekly lean coffee to talk about those things. I often put a fourth column that's action items, and we can turn those action items into a list of potential retrospective improvements. We can say, we can use, anybody heard of silent brainstorming? Okay, I won't teach silent brainstorming right now because I'm out of time. But a method for voting on things that prevents premature convergence, that prevents people influencing each other, is they can take the list of things that they've identified for improvements and say 1, 2, 3, 4, and now everybody write down secretly the number that they care most about, and then we tally the numbers, and that's the thing we're going to work on for this time frame. We could say, we think this is a 3-week improvement, so I guess we should check in weekly on how that's going. Create an A3 or a Kaizen memo for it that says essentially problem statement, hypothesis, and then outcome, and track those and see what we can do to build a culture of continuous learning and improvement within our teams at the team level. And Slack for innovation. I shouldn't have to talk about why innovation is important these days. The same guy, Jabe, he's a Lean Startup Machine mentor. He, when he was the CTO, that's him, at the Library Corporation, they had internal Lean Startup Machines in-house. They had a part of their flow-based systems capacity was dedicated to Slack that you could use for a Lean Startup Machine kind of thing. In a nutshell, it was something like the validated learning would be finding 10 early adopter customers who opted in to being approached, would have to say, yes, the idea that you have is something that we would like you to build, and here's $50. And then you come back with your $500, and you go, got my $500, boss, I want to build the thing. And then the organization says, well, all right, then we're going to drop $100 grand into development effort to build an MVP, get it out to those early adopter customers, see how it goes. Luke Holman and keynote he gave in Winnipeg, where I became a celebrated international speaker. He talked about how any organization, it costs $5 million to innovate anything new, and I found that depressing and apocryphal, because I know a place where they did it for $100 grand. And within a year of one of those products, they had a revenue gain of $1 million a year in subscribers from something they spent less than $100 grand on building, because they allocated Slack to innovation within their organization. Cool stuff. So what happens without Slack? Failure demand, silos, dumpster teams, overloaded bottlenecks, deadline-driven development, crap jakers, exponential delays. Another kind of Slack that should probably not have been folded in there, play. We should play games. We should play the Get Kanban game. Russell Healy's game is awesome. This is a design pattern card game that came from Industrial Logic, and as we can tell, it's a really old picture because there's like a really old CRT monitor in the background. And that team that I talked about who had the stand-up problems, this is what their burn down looked like. It was flat, and it dumped on the last day. So we know that right about here is when test got it. The Monday before the Tuesday it was going to ship. That's when testers started working on it. And the developers started working on these things when that happened. So all we did was we went to a model where we said, let's experiment with WIP limits. Let's make all the stories small. And let's have just one story per developer, random. Let's see how one story per developer works. And a bunch of people, a couple people, said, well, how will we know the testers are working? And I said, we don't care. Our customers and this business don't care how busy we are. When somebody goes into this retailer's shop and they buy a thing and they check out, they don't think, boy, I'm really glad the testers were working the whole time. And it was a bit shocking, but what happened is when we did that, their actual burn down looked like this. What's really interesting to me is the continuous improvement that happened here, because at the beginning of the iteration, they had a big long flat day for a couple of days, and then they dumped, and then had a really long break, and then dumped. This was where their product owner realized that he was the single product owner bottleneck. And nobody told him. He just went, oh, a bunch of stories are getting done way faster than we've ever seen before. They're waiting for me to review them. So he printed out 2 pieces of paper, demo desk, and they didn't have co-located teams. He put it up over their war room space and said, I'm gonna be at the demo desk all day, every day. If you have something for me to review, just bring it to me right then. And that's what happened here. We went from the flat plateaus to sudden rocketing down of stories because that guy became available. They just about freaked out when this happened because nobody in the entire organization had seen the Rubicon cross, the projected success. And indeed, they delivered Friday. So the first thing they said was, well, what are we going to do? We have extra days. Should we pull more work in? Who thinks my answer was yes? So essentially, I was able to say, look, we created Slack. You now have an extra 2 days to help that tester sort out her nightmare of test case database. You now have time to work together to learn new things. You can sharpen your saw and then kick into the next iteration better off. So the testimonials that I got was a lead dev, not that lead dev. Said limiting our work in progress, so we focused on completion was a big deal for us. It felt better to have 1 story than 5 tasks. Their lead tester, the testers never said anything. They had a very kind of downtrodden test culture. Development was very helpful with testing, volunteering to clear impediments and helping us test during the sprint because they had time. They could do it now. They weren't busy working on 15 tasks. They were working on 1 story. The team is excited in helping each other out during stand-up and working together in the war room. They didn't have co-located teams because they were currently seeded by a resourcing algorithm. So the question of even where to put a wall was impossible. It's like, well, we could put a wall here, but there are 5 teams that see it. So it wouldn't mean anything to 4 of those teams. Anyway, this was a big deal for those guys, and they got a lot of value. So I want to focus on value. That's kind of my core message, is that honestly I don't think it helps us to focus on frameworks or helps us to focus on Agile or helps us to focus on anything but why are we here as a business and as people contributing to this business. How can we clarify this? It's not easy, but it's worth doing. We need to know why we're here so that we can align and get them done. There's this amazing video. This is a screen capture from it. That's Dr. Russell Akoff, a hero of mine. I think he's awesome. This video, it's on YouTube in a couple places. One of them says that Russ Akoff gave a TED Talk. It's a brilliant talk, and he talks about systems thinking. He talks about how, essentially similarly to what Stephen Bungay said, we're our interactions. Specifically, he says a system is not the sum of its parts. A system is the product of their interactions. And so we should optimize the interactions of our parts instead of trying to create hyper-productive teams and focus on local optima, because it doesn't work. It's a really great talk. I can't recommend it enough. These are some of the books from which the concepts I talked about today originated. This is Jim Benson's book, Why Plans Fail. It's $3 on Amazon or free if you're Prime. It's a great introduction to cognitive bias and psychology. It's 85 pages and really terrific. If you love that book, go and get Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow. It's a little more Reinertson-y, but they're both really great. Principles of Product Development Flow I talked about. This is Lean is a bestseller in somewhere in Western Europe, Sweden, Finland. It's essentially the book from which this whole concept of resource efficiency versus flow efficiency is most elaborated. Art of Action, The Goal is the only book I ever put down because I was sad that it was ending. As it got narrower and narrower, I started thinking, oh man, I'm going to be done with this book in no time. I'm not a big reader. It takes me a long time to read books. I was flying through it, and I loved that book so much that I stopped reading because I didn't want it to be over. Slack, DeMarco, I want you to cheat. That's where failure demand is talked about.
Phoenix project, if you like to go.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've heard the Phoenix project is the goal for DevOps. I've heard it's great, and some of us know Gene, and those guys are awesome. I only wanted to put 8 books up there, and I didn't talk about DevOps Phoenix project, but the goal is phenomenal. I love that book. So, because I don't usually do slide decks, and I know I'm supposed to have a cat in it, I decided to end with a kitten in a knit mushroom costume. That's all I got. Say at me, sayat.me/aurec. That's where you can leave anonymous feedback. You can be as mean as you like. I would love to hear anything that you have to say. And I kind of rushed through that because now it's 8. I've been going for 90 minutes. I'm sorry about
that. Everyone okay? No whiplash?
So just to make sure I got it all correct.
Definitely, thank you. Anyone who needed their PDU